The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the kitchen where Daniel sat, sipping his coffee. He glanced at the clock. 7:30 a.m. Emily was running late again. Their daughter Lily entered the kitchen, her backpack slung over one shoulder. "Morning, Dad," she said, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. "Morning, sweetheart. Ready for school?" She nodded, taking a bite of the apple. Emily rushed in, her heels clicking against the tile floor. "Sorry, I'm late. Big meeting today," she said, pecking Daniel on the cheek. "Another one? You've been having a lot of those lately," Daniel remarked. Emily hesitated, then smiled. "You know how it is. Climbing the corporate ladder." Daniel watched as she and Lily left, a nagging feeling settling in his stomach. Over the next few weeks, Daniel noticed changes. Emily's wardrobe became more upscale, her work hours extended, and she was often distracted. One evening, Daniel decided to surprise her at work. He arrived with her favorite coffee, but the receptionist informed him that Emily had left hours ago. Confused, he returned home to find Emily in the shower. "Hey, I stopped by your office today," he said casually. Emily froze for a moment before responding. "Oh, I had to step out for a client meeting." "Sorry, I missed you." Daniel nodded, but doubt crept in. Determined to uncover the truth, he began observing her behavior more closely. Late-night texts, hushed phone calls, and unexplained absences became frequent. One day, he found a receipt for an expensive dinner for two. The name on the credit card statement was unfamiliar. His heart sank. Confronting Emily, she denied any wrongdoing, insisting it was a business dinner. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He hired a private investigator, who soon provided evidence of Emily's affair with her wealthy boss. Devastated, Daniel confronted her. Story mirror. "I know about the affair, Emily." She looked away, tears welling up. "I'm sorry, Daniel." But the betrayal ran deeper. Emily filed for divorce, accusing Daniel of misconduct to gain full control of their assets and custody of Lily. Caught off guard, Daniel found himself fighting not just for his marriage, but for his reputation and his daughter. Lily, torn between her parents, initially sided with her mother. But as she uncovered inconsistencies in Emily's stories, she began to question the narrative. One evening, she approached Daniel. "Dad, I need to know the truth." He shared everything, from the affair to the false accusations. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I believe you." Together, they prepared to confront Emily, seeking justice and closure. "Would you like me to continue with part 2? Daniel stared at the bank statement again, his fingers tightening around the edge of the paper. A few weeks ago, he might have chalked up the new charges to regular expenses, maybe gifts or last-minute office supplies. But not anymore. Not after everything else he'd seen. There were dinners at high-end restaurants in parts of the city Emily rarely visited. Hotel bookings under her name in neighborhoods, far from their home, booked for nights she said she was working late. It didn't add up. Not if you believed her story. Daniel didn't want to believe it. For over 20 years, he and Emily had shared a life. They had raised a daughter together, gone through every hardship as a team. When they didn't have much, they leaned on each other. He had supported her career dreams, cheered her promotions, and stayed up late to help her prep for big presentations. That woman, the woman he married, would never lie to him, would never betray him. But this woman, this version of Emily, was someone else. She came home late again that night. Daniel didn't say anything. He watched from the living room as she kicked off her heels, set her purse on the counter, and walked into the kitchen to pour herself a glass of wine. "You eat already?" she asked, not looking at him. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I wasn't sure when you'd be back." Emily sighed. "I told you. We had a client dinner." He studied her carefully. "At a hotel in Silverwood Heights?" She paused mid-sip. "What?" Daniel held up the bank statement. "The charge from last night." She set the glass down a little too hard. "Daniel, are you going through my account?" "It's a shared account, Emily," he said calmly, though his chest was tight. "I started noticing the withdrawals, the patterns." Her expression changed. Not guilt, not shame, just cold detachment. "You're acting paranoid." "Then explain it to me." She walked past him. "I'm too tired for this." Daniel stood. "Are you seeing someone else?" She froze. Her back was to him, but He saw her shoulders tense. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, she turned, eyes hard. "Don't be ridiculous. You didn't deny it. You're unbelievable," she snapped. "After everything I've done for this family." "Emily, I'm just trying to understand what's happening." "What's happening," she cut in, "is that I'm exhausted. I'm working harder than I ever have, and instead of support, I get interrogated." She stormed up the stairs, and Daniel was left standing alone in the quiet house. The next few days were a blur. Emily avoided him. She buried herself in work, and when she was home, she barely spoke. Their once warm and affectionate home had turned cold and quiet. Lily noticed. She was 17, sharp as a tack, and despite her attempts to pretend everything was normal, Daniel could see the concern in her eyes. "Are you and Mom fighting?" she asked one evening. Daniel hesitated. "We're just going through something. Nothing you need to worry about." But she kept staring at him. "You're sad, Dad." His heart broke a little. He smiled weakly and reached for her hand. "I'll be okay, sweetheart." It was the following week when everything collapsed. Daniel came home early from work. He had decided to take a personal day. He needed to clear his head. As he walked up the driveway, he noticed a sleek black car parked 2 houses down. He'd seen it before, parked outside Emily's office once when he'd picked her up for lunch. It belonged to her boss, Julian West. Daniel's stomach turned. Inside the house, it was quiet. Too quiet. He walked upstairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. The bedroom door was closed. He approached carefully and paused when he heard voices. He couldn't make out the words, but one of them was Emily. Then he heard Julian's voice. His pulse raced. Without thinking, he pushed open the door. Julian was sitting on the edge of the bed. Emily stood nearby, her arms crossed, her eyes wide with alarm. "What's going on?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily stepped forward. "Daniel, what are you doing home?" "I should be asking you the same thing." Julian stood, adjusting his cuffs. "I think I should go." Daniel didn't move. "Yeah, I think you should." Julian walked past him without a word. The door closed behind him, and the silence that followed felt like a thunderstorm waiting to break. Daniel turned to Emily. "How long has it been going on?" She didn't answer. "Don't lie, please. Just tell me the truth." Emily sat on the bed. She looked at her hands. 3 years. The breath left Daniel's lungs. He had suspected. But hearing it confirmed, 3 years, felt like a punch to the heart. "I gave everything to this family," he said, his voice cracking. "And you were living a double life?" She looked up at him. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It just did. He understands me in ways you don't." Daniel stepped back, like her words had burned him. "You mean he has money? He has power. That's what this was about?" "You think it's that simple?" she snapped. "You don't know what it's like to always carry the weight, to always feel like you're drowning in someone else's expectations." "And I didn't carry weight?" Daniel asked. "I sacrificed everything so you could build your career. I stood by you every time you doubted yourself. I believed in you when no one else did." Emily wiped her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. But you did," he whispered, over and over again. A week later, he received the court notice. She was filing for divorce and accusing him of emotional abuse, manipulation, and controlling behavior. The words hit harder than any truth he'd uncovered. They were lies. Cruel, calculated lies. His accounts were frozen. His lawyer informed him that Emily had already moved to secure the house, the joint savings, and sole custody of Lily. Daniel was in disbelief. He thought he'd hit rock bottom before. But this was betrayal on a whole new level. Lily was devastated when she found out. Emily had told her that Daniel had changed, that he was lashing out, making false accusations. At first, Lily distanced herself, unsure of what to believe. Daniel never said a bad word about her mother. He simply waited, hoped the truth would come out. It did, just not how he expected. One evening, Lily came home from school early and overheard a phone call between her mother and Julian. Emily was laughing. about how easy it had been to take everything, about how Daniel didn't have the guts to fight back. Lily recorded it. She showed it to Daniel with tears in her eyes. "She lied to me," she whispered. "She made me think you were the problem." Daniel wrapped his arms around her. "It's okay. I'm just glad you know now." That recording changed everything. The next day, Daniel's lawyer filed a motion to challenge the claims against him. Lily's statement and the recording served as key evidence. Emily's legal team began to falter. The accusations crumbled, but the scars remained. Daniel stood in the wreckage of a life he thought he knew. The love of his life had become his enemy. His home had become a battleground. But through it all, he still had Lily. And for now, that was enough. Daniel sat quietly in the courtroom, his hands folded in his lap, the faint ticking of the clock echoing louder than the murmurs around him. Across the room, Emily avoided his gaze. She wore the same expression she'd worn for weeks now, stoic, composed, unreadable. But he had learned that her stillness was a mask. Beneath it lived a storm of choices she didn't want to own. The judge entered, and the room stood. Proceedings began. Statements were read. Evidence was presented. Lily sat with Daniel, her head high, unwavering in her truth. Her presence gave him strength. The recording of Emily's call with Julian was the tipping point. The judge listened silently, brows drawn, as Emily's voice played, laughing, mocking, scheming. There was no mistaking the context. Her accusations of abuse were fabricated. Her motivations, gain full control of their assets and remove Daniel from the picture, were laid bare. Emily looked away when it ended. Her attorney tried to recover, to shift the conversation, but the damage had already sunk in. Lily's written statement, backed by her emotional testimony, carried weight. She spoke not just as a daughter, but as a witness to the crumbling of her family from within. "I wanted to believe my mom," she said, her voice soft but clear. "But I saw what she did, and I saw how my dad still protected her, how he never tried to turn me against her, even when she was doing that to him. He didn't deserve any of this." Daniel's throat tightened. He looked at Lily, silently thanking her for her strength. It was more than he ever expected. The judge ruled in Daniel's favor. The false accusations were formally dismissed. Custody would be shared, but primary residence would be with Daniel. The house would be sold, with profits split fairly, and the savings, what was left, would be divided equally. It wasn't a complete victory. No part of this felt like a win. But it was justice, and in that, there was something to hold on to. After the ruling, outside the courtroom, Emily approached. Her voice was quiet, uncertain. "I didn't think it would end like this." Daniel didn't respond immediately. He looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time in months, she was still the woman he had loved once. But she was also the woman who'd torn their life apart, with secrets, deception, and a cold ambition that had buried their vows beneath lies. "You had a choice," he said softly. "You could have been honest. We could have ended this with dignity. But you turned it into a war." "I thought I was doing what was best for me," she murmured, avoiding his eyes. "I didn't think you'd fight back." He gave a sad smile. "That's the problem. You never really saw me." She looked as if she might say something more, but she didn't. She walked away, heels clicking against the marble floor, fading into the crowd. Months passed. Daniel and Lily moved into a smaller home, not far from where they used to live. It wasn't grand, but it was theirs. It had quiet mornings and unspoken comfort. Daniel found peace in the mundane again, cooking breakfast, folding laundry, driving Lily to her weekend volunteer work. He returned to his writing, something he'd put aside for years. His stories began pouring out with a clarity he hadn't felt in a long time. Pain had a strange way of sharpening the soul. One afternoon, Lily came home from school, tossing her backpack on the couch. "Mom called," she said. Daniel paused, looking up from his notes. "Yeah?" "She asked if I wanted to come spend the weekend. I told her I'd think about it." He nodded slowly. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Lily sat beside him. Do you think people can change? He exhaled, thinking carefully. I think people can learn. But change? Real change? That takes more than regret. It takes facing the damage you've done. She sounded different, not like before. Daniel didn't speak right away. He'd wrestled with that question in his own mind. He didn't wish Emily harm, but forgiveness. That would take time, if it ever came. If she really wants to be better, he said finally, she'll show it. Not with words, but with actions. Lily nodded, thoughtful. Later that week, Emily came by. She stood awkwardly at the front door, a small envelope in hand. I don't expect you to read this now, she said, handing it to Daniel. But it's everything I couldn't say before. He took it without a word. She looked past him at Lily, who gave a small nod, then disappeared upstairs. Daniel waited until the house was quiet. He sat down in the living room and opened the envelope. The letter was long, raw, apologetic in ways that felt real. She wrote about her mistakes, her pride, her confusion, about how she lost sight of the life they'd built together while chasing something shinier, more exciting. She admitted she let ambition blind her, that she let her relationship with Julian become more than it should have, that in trying to take control of her life, she'd ended up destroying the one thing that had been steady all along, Daniel. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just understanding. Daniel read it twice. He set it down, heart heavy. He didn't know what would come next for her, or for them. He didn't know if bridges could ever truly be rebuilt. But he knew who he was now. He knew what he stood for. And most importantly, he had his daughter's trust, his integrity, and his quiet life. No longer shaken by secrets and silence. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily joined him on the back porch. Do you think we'll ever be the same again? She asked. Daniel shook his head gently. I don't think we're supposed to be, but I think we'll be okay. She rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in a long while he believed it.